co-founder, not co-founder and CEO. We're three co-founders in the company.
Okay, so it's CU.
No, it's only co-founder, not CEO.
Understood. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion on decoding marketing strategies for streaming business. We would like to begin by thanking you all for being part of fifth edition of Pixel Digital Entertainment reaching a new peak. We would also like to thank our title partner Woot, platinum partner Amazon Prime Video, CX partner Zendesk, content delivery partner Limelight Networks, gold partners Lionsgate and Shimaru Entertainment. Without any further ado, let me introduce you to our moderator first, Mr. Vivek Bhargava, co-founder from ProfitWheel. And now let me invite our panelists for the session. Mr. Arjun Mohan, CEO from UpGrad, Mr. Ritesh Kanani, Head of Brand Marketing from My 11 Circle, Mr. Advit Sahdev, Vice President Marketing from CoinDCX, and Mr. Rohit Raj, producer from Tindora. I would request all the participants to keep posting their question in the chat box, and the panel will address few selected questions by the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Bhargava.
Thanks, Shivani. So this is a very interesting topic. Overall, what I would like to do is first invite all the panelists to just give a sort of a 1 2 minute view on the topic. I'll start with you, Advit, your take on the topic, and then we can go into a Q&A mode thereafter. All of us have given our take on the topic.
Sure. My take on the topic, streaming, today has become so vast, right? I mean, we did not imagine streaming can be so vast in terms of the scale, in terms of type of content, in terms of the audience it is able to reach, in terms of the platforms. And today it's very difficult, not just for a consumer, but for a brand, for a marketer, to create a very large space, right? When it comes to streaming. Now we have seen certain applications in terms of, whether it is gaming, whether it is live sports streaming, and so on. But there's still a lot to be done. Definitely a lot more to be seen in this space, in the streaming space. It's very fascinating from a marketer's perspective because there's so much new happening. And when I say streaming, it's not just the streaming that's there today, but the things that will come in with Meta and with virtual worlds. That is really going to define the future of how digital will be shaped, how we all will live our lives, and look forward to a great discussion here.
Yeah. So I fully agree, Advait. I think there are going to be thousands of more locations and virtual worlds that will be streaming constantly. And I just got a quest to last week, and just imagine the streaming that happens where a person is visiting the Eiffel Tower in a way, sort of in a drone, and it's being streamed, and we can watch it and entertain ourselves and visit new places. So fully agree. Over to you, Rohit. Would love to have your take on the topic. Sorry, you're on mute, Rohit. Oops.
No, I think there's some audio issue.
Okay, so maybe I can start off with Ritesh and then I'll come back to you, Rohit.
Sure.
Yeah, Ritesh, your take on it.
Thanks, Vivek. Hi, everyone. Uh, while all the digital brands, I work with Games 24/7. It's an online gaming company, and I lead the brand for My 11 Circle, which is the sports fantasy. What I wanted to touch upon out here is that all the digital streaming businesses are onto acquiring hordes and hordes of customer, and with the entire revolution happening of digitization, that's even scaling up. But then what do we do once we acquire them? Like do we leave them? Do we go on the quest of acquiring more? A lot of times we say that we have data science and we try to look at patterns, but then what we are doing is cohorting, essentially, clubbing people as per functionalities, which is something very important, but again very different from community building. So I think community building plays a very important role for all the streaming platforms, since we are moving from retail to online. It fills up a lot of trust deficit that has been created by being an online brand. Also, I think it provides excellent user growth opportunities. For example, at Games 24/7, what we do in gaming is also study how do referrals work. So new players, when they talk to their friends, play with their friends, and we call them their kids and then their grandkids. So we observe the patterns in them, and then what we try to do is, instead of like while we cohort them, we also try to bring them together. So that is what is important. Community building, I think, will play a big role as we go more and more digital, and as the entire entertainment medium makes the switch to the digital platform.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Ritesh. As I was mentioning, I had a chance to attend an Harvard course, and what I found the differentiation in the content was not the professor teaching you, but the quality of the students and the questions they were asking. So that encouraged me to sign up for OPM next year. But I fully agree with you that I think the community makes all the difference, and especially when you talk about gaming or you talk about education, the community is the multiplier. And basically, if all of marketing is going to become cohort and segment based marketing, and you cannot actually target them individually, then the community is going to play the most important role, and referral marketing is obviously going to be a very integral part of it. So, Rohit, over to you. I hope your mic is working. Oh, it doesn't seem to be working yet. Okay, we'll come back to you. Shivani, would you sort out the mic with Rohit? Arjun, over to you. Would love to have your take on the topic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So first of all, interesting topic. I think we were talking backstage. It's a very broad topic because finally, fundamentally what is happening today is media as a concept is just not about few people creating content and rest of all consuming it. With the streaming coming into fashion today, what has happened is that a large number of creators have come in. Right, a large part of the consumers have become creators today. I mean, the if you talk to a 17-year-old today and ask him who are the influencers in his life, you will not hear the name of a Bollywood celebrity. That is the situation today, and that's the change YouTube and these kind of platforms are driving it out. And it's just not about media and the OTT spaces also today, right? I mean, if somebody would have asked me 10 years ago, do you think a streaming platform like Twitch can exist and billions of dollars worth, I would have said, not ever, ever. I mean, who would want to see others playing, right? We all like to play the games ourselves. So, what is really happening today is, I would say that streaming business now is already established, at least for somebody like me in UpGrad, whose core TG is working professional. I am seeing a very clear movement from mass medium TV like interfaces. Sorry, mass medium TV like options to streaming today to a YouTube or an OTT, because people like to consume content which they like. They don't want to consume anything which is thrown to them. So if you remember, many years ago there was a shift from Doordarshan to a lot of private channels where suddenly people got what they wanted. Now it is the next level of switching where it is moving to more about consuming content online. And very interestingly, this is with AR VR coming in and with the Oculus of the world coming in, it is moving more towards a community building exercise, because a lot of these content creators don't allow advertisements. I mean, whether we like it or not, advertisements for these people are considered uncool. So how do brands like us make our presence? How do we tell the story? The only way is you tell the story along with the creator. So that's where things are moving today. Community exercises, be a storyteller along with the creator, building out referral mechanisms, work, creating content which is more about master and a disciple, and then the disciple becoming master. All these are, I mean, it's no longer the traditional marketing strategy. It has become very, very different from what we would have classified as marketing a few years ago. I'm sorry, I live in an area near to a jet testing place, so sorry about the background noise.
No issues. So actually, I have a very interesting story to share. What about when you mentioned large amount of creators? So my daughter is 18 today. A few years ago, when she was 16, we had gone somewhere and she bought some 2,000 rupees, uh, something, right? And it was like in my mind, Fizul Kharchi. So my father had given me this lecture 20 years ago. Paisa पेट पे नहीं उगता है. I had memorized the entire lecture and I gave her the entire lecture. And then what happened was she became a mini influencer. She has 300,000 followers on Instagram today, and now she gets 1,20,000 rupees for a post. She earned 5 lakh rupees last week, and then we were having a discussion, and she mentioned, "Papa, you were saying something about 2,000 rupees." I said, "Maaf kar de meri maa." It's like मेरे को पेड़ नहीं मालूम था, तेरे को मिल गया पेड़ पैसा का पेड़. But the thing is so true, right? That today her influencers, her creator, her consumption, her streaming, what she watches is so different than what ours would be. And ironically, uh, like she's crazy about Jordan shoes, but she didn't know who Michael Jordan was in detail. She just knew that there is a guy called Jordan, but she didn't know anything about him. So I can imagine that in our model, the celebrity was somebody who had done a certain thing, but for her, it was just a Nike brand. And it is such an interesting thought that the new generation and the new creators, their knowledge about the past creators or the past people who have mastered the craft is so different. Uh, okay, I'm getting a knock on the door, but is okay? Rohit is not back as yet, right? Okay. Uh, yeah, so I think I'll just start with probably Arjun. Uh, I want to know that how is sort of shift happened pre and post COVID in terms of how brand messaging is done. And I'm just going to just go and open the door, but please, Arjun, please continue. I'll just be back in a minute.
I think Arjun's facing connectivity issues. Uh, so apologies to the audience. We'll just wait for 1 minute. Uh, so Rick, looks like Arjun's facing connectivity issues.
Oh, okay,
He's yeah.
sure. So then maybe I can start with you, Ritesh. Uh, I think you did mention about community building, but if you had to think of how does one build a community and what kind of consumer insights do you need to start building a community, retain it, grow it, would love to have some thoughts from you on how this is done.
Sure, sure. So, I think what matters in building a good community is the approach. Like whether you are trying to build it outside in, for example, like trying to connect customers out of functionality so that they can, be connected just because they are on your platform, or something which is inside out, which is where you identify what is the, what is the core passion, or probably what is that insecurity that brings them together. Like what is that, and in a way try to bring them together while you also functionally classify them. Try to bring them together with content where they can associate with each other. Like for example, I can say like core passion. Like if you look at something like only like if you don't look at streaming, and if you look at some like something like traveling, which goes with everyone, right? A biker community which is totally passionate about driving together comes together because of their core passion. At the same time, there's a community of solo travelers, and especially women solo travelers, and they come together because of that entire thing that we can do that, and let's make things safe enough to go about it. So that brings them together. So you need to find what is the core of your community while you also classify them into different cohorts and different functions, and build it. My suggestion would be to build it inside out rather than trying to push them towards each other.
Yeah. I think Arjun, just mute yourself. I think there is some background noise coming in.
Yeah.
So I think I
Can
agree
you
with
can
you.
you
Yeah, sorry.
sorry, I got logged out due to some reason. Can you see me? Because I can't see my screen on it. Sorry about that.
Okay. We can see
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Your voice is slightly patchy, but we can hear you also.
Sure, sure.
Okay. So, Arjun, I think one of the things that we wanted to discuss with you was that from an upgrad strategy point of view, pre-COVID and post-COVID, has then been a shift in the way brand messaging is done for you guys?
Yeah, so this has been a question we have been pondering on off and on as and when the circumstances changes. So one decision we took as a brand when this whole
Okay. Okay. We'll wait for Arjun to come back. So
This is what can happen in live streaming also.
this is what happens in live streaming. True. Okay, so would love to know from you, Advit. I think you're in a very interesting industry. Obviously, it's the I think the hottest industry in terms of private equity, in terms of wealth creation, in terms of everything. But what do you think is the role of content in crypto from an education point of view? Would love to have your thoughts.
Sure, sure. I'll talk about content. I'll just talk a bit. I just want to add a little bit on what Ritesh also mentioned in terms of community. Right. So there's this very interesting a theory called group dynamics. Now, most of you in the audience might have watched a movie called A Beautiful Mind. Right. I happened to watch it very recently. It's one of the most famous mathematicians who also won a Nobel Prize, and he created something called Nash's equilibrium. Right. It's on group dynamics, which is also applicable for communities and which is also applicable for a lot of other things where a lot of people interact. Very simple fundamental, proved by maths. It says that a group is a winner. A group wins only if every individual's interest is taken care of, and of the group also. Right? So it's he invented the second part, which is and of the group also, which means that whenever a community has to exist, it has to make sure that everyone in the group is a winner, everyone in the group is supported, everyone in the group gets a lot of value add from that particular group or community. Right? I think that is the basic fundamental of any group, any community, and whether it is online, whether it is offline, whether it is in streaming, whether it is on crypto and anywhere, that is what drives any community. Now, coming back to crypto, in terms of crypto, there is a lot going on at this moment. Right, at this moment, there is people want to invest. People are, there's a lot of news going on in terms of what speculations. There are regulations knocking the door. Uh, so many things happening, right? So, if you think from a normal consumer, a normal Indian, there's so much of information. There's so much of confusion going on. Is this legal? Is this something where I should put in money? Will I be punished for doing that? Will I be rewarded for doing that? All of that, right? So, education is a huge, huge, huge initiative where any crypto brand has to invest, and we are also investing very heavily over there. We have our own brand called DCX Learn, where courses are there, but we are planning to make sure that there are hundreds and thousands of courses around fundamentals, around tech analysis, around learning the basics of crypto. And what we've also observed is that it works great when it's live streamed. Okay? When there are experts from our company or from the community who come, right? Who and people ask questions. People ask genuine questions, and we answer to people live. That has the maximum traction. That builds trust like anything. So courses is great, but live streaming has been a game changer, and it will continue to be a game changer when it comes to building trust in any new category.
Oh, very interesting thought. So one of the thoughts that I wanted to like just leave you with is that what we've seen in education is when a brand tries to educate, there is always this sort of bias, and
Yes.
consumers feel that there is an agenda behind it. So I was just wondering, even like we were talking about celebrity school, should we create a blockchain crypto course on a neutral platform? Because the reason I created content out there was that if somebody says I'm great, that's better than me trying to say I'm great. So overall,
Absolutely.
so I think we will talk after this session then how we
Actually,
can
we
create.
started that initiative. We have actually tied up with a couple of large brands.
Hmm.
Those courses will be out in late December or early Jan.
Oh, awesome. That's a great idea. Yeah. So over to you, Arjun. I hope your camera and voice is
Yeah,
working this time. So
yeah.
please,
Something wrong here. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll
So
probably answer the question which I was trying to answer, or
yeah. So I'll
yeah,
just repeat the question because just for the audience that how is brand messaging change pre and post from a strategy point of view for your upgrade?
sure. So when the whole pandemic started and the lockdown happened, uh, we decided, we took a conscious decision that we'll continue to invest in marketing. There were quite a few people who were not sure. A lot of companies decided to go slow on marketing, but we decided opposite. The reason was that we felt that our consumer or our customer, the learner who comes in and takes our course, we felt that the person will need help. Nobody knows what is going to happen in the future. The skill sets which will be required after the pandemic is off may be different. The skill set which is required to survive the pandemic may be different. And hence we decided that we will be there to handhold them, to help them come into this digital economy, which is what was happening. And hence the messaging and the marketing was never slowed down. So there was also a point where we started going out and telling them that if you are coming to UpGrad, we are going to help you out with सिर्फ नाम की नहीं काम की degree. So fundamentally, we were telling them that see, there is something at the end of it, right? You have always Indians say काम की चीज है कि नहीं. So, yeah, there's some value to it, and also there's a job possibly indirectly at it. Okay, we don't sell jobs like the way we're discussing, but there is an implicit assumption that this is what will happen to you. So through the pandemic, we took the opportunity really well, in my opinion, and we built this brand. So So in last 18 months, we saw our, our awareness, the TAM, the top of the mind awareness go through the roof. Now, at least most of the people in working professional space know there is something called as UpGrad, which does some working professional learning courses. So by the end of pandemic, we saw a clear change in the audience. The audience were now more confident. The audience were now thinking about going back to work, so on and so forth. So from awareness stage of marketing, we have finally moved into a consideration stage of marketing, where now our campaigns are more about why upgrade and what is the value proposition. And very clearly, we are saying that, see, we know that you are used to doing offline. We know that there are a lot of positives to offline. But do you know that there are a lot of positives to online also? And now is the right time to talk about it, because you just came out of doing all the things online, and you know that there are certain things which can be done online well. So this has been the metamorphosis. I would see it as a natural process of brand building, wherein we start with awareness and then consideration and then probably go deep, go mass, and then finally go local. That's how I generally see things. So we are in stage 2 of brand building, in my opinion.
Okay. And I think from my point of view, I think the biggest awareness I came to know about UpGrad is when Ronnie sponsored a table tennis team in the Ultimate Table Tennis League because I own a team. So it was 17 days of watching UpGrad every day. So
Yeah, so many
as
ways of
Advit
doing
would
it, right?
absolutely. Like I think sports is one area where I think this whole sports culture is now becoming big. So today, a
Yeah.
little bit of a plug, but the top 100, we've never had so many top 100 table tennis players in the world from India. So some of these sports and this whole league system of IPL is really becoming exciting, and I'm really happy that Upgrad is supporting table tennis in that way. So over to you, Ritesh. We spoke about like communities, but I think this whole data science and uh, understanding the cohorts more effectively. How does one use data science for building community? And I think that question is then valid for even Arjun and Advit, that how is data science playing a role in our businesses? So starting with you, Ritesh, what is your thoughts on it?
Sure. Uh, so, like I said, your user base can be qualified into various different ways in terms of what kind of handsets they use or what kind of geography they come from, and so on and so forth. But I think one of the important things that we can figure out in terms of uh, finding out how do these guys, and this is difficult. I mean, I know that data science, even at its stage, is right now growing. It's at a nascent stage, so we need to find out a way to do this. But then, because we are all talking about online businesses, we need to somehow also find opportunities where our communities interact in the real spaces or probably enjoy the moment. So for us, like sports is really important. So probably when India is playing, all the players are really excited, or probably a big tournament like IPL is happening. So that's when, if you can find out how can people really enjoy the real space, like it's really surprising. For example, in what we do out here, apart from having a chat function on an app or probably interactability, people have their own WhatsApp groups and they connect, right? So if you can find out those cohorts which are very strongly connected, and then probably the way you club your offerings can also change. It can be much more what do you say, targeted towards affinity based communities, like yeah, something of that sort. But I think data science will have to find a way much beyond functional ways to also find out how do these guys interact in real world spaces, and that's where there are opportunities to make your brand rub or that trust even more stronger with these communities.
So in fact, Ritesh, what you said is music to my ears because that's what ProfitWheel is building. So basically, what we do is a little bit of a plug. We ingest first party data of brands and then basically tell them what cohorts and segments the consumers' psychographics are. So we pull in data from Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, DV360, etc. But that helps in content creation, helps in media planning, helps in creative, helps in expanding to different countries. So that's what our consumer intelligence platform does. And right now, our focus market is US, but eventually we'll come to India also because India is still focused on CAC, 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 and some of the other anything which is intelligence and marketing based paying monies is challenging. But once we're successful in US, hopefully we'll come to India too. So over to you, Advit. Would love to know your thoughts on data sciences and how does CoinDCX use data sciences effectively?
Sure, sure. But definitely, before that, I will vouch for ProfitWheel definitely, right? I mean, I have taken the demo. The only reason why we are not able to use it is we can't use Facebook and Google as of now, right?
Yeah.
But data science is key to us, right? One of the things that we are doing. So before I get into what we are doing, right? I as a marketer spend 50% of my day looking at data, right? Now I won't have done that 5 years back. I won't have done that maybe 2 years or 3 years back also. Right? That is what I do every day. I look at each and every data point in terms of user journey, in terms of sources, in terms of you know why a particular spike happened in an hour, right? Why a particular dip happened in an hour, right? So think of us as marketing traders, right? I mean, when you look at traders, they look at charts day in and day out, and that is what we are also doing over here. But that is more from a very transactional perspective, a very tactical perspective, right? In a strategic perspective, at the back end, we are building a prediction engine for marketing, right? Where we essentially capture all our data and map it out. And eventually, I don't know when it will be ready, but eventually, maybe in a month or 2 months, we will have that engine saying that, okay, we are going to predict the number of users that or who are going to activate on our platform, right? How many users are going to do transactions on a given day in a given hour. That is what we are aiming at. That is what our idea is, uh, because data can do it. Data has done it in other industries, so why not marketing?
Hmm. So I know that Arjun, I had along with data sciences, but one additional question for you: how do you expand geographically? So I think overall expanding out of India, and is there a thought that again advertising industry is facing a lot of challenges? Cookie deprecation is happening. We are basically facing this whole challenge of subscription based services, whether it's tech or OTT, where there is no advertising options available. Is advertising an option to reduce the cost of education and subsidize education? And is that an opportunity the advertising industry should look at? Is there a opportunity for that? And what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so there are three questions. Maybe I should take
Yeah.
it one after another. On the
Yes.
data science bit, yeah. So we, at least at a working professional and students level, we run the largest in terms of the cohort for data science in the country today. So we have almost 3,000 students learning data science from us every quarter. That's the level, and I'm only talking about our core business. I mean, US universities, I'm not even counting in that. So yeah, so that is something which I have been invested in at a company level. Uh, I think both the application I'm using has been spoken about by Ritesh and Advit. Um, Data-driven attribution is a big, big problem, especially with the number of platforms you are doing advertisement in, be it the Google, the LinkedIn, the Facebook of the world, and the hundreds and thousands of the affiliate partners. Everybody claims every sale. That is how the situation is. And although this country is CAC obsessed, finally it becomes a big cost problem because everyone says that I gave you the sale, so invest more in me, right? So it has been imperative to build a data science level at the marketing attribution level, wherein you finally understand which was the platform which really converted this customer. So we have developed an in-house model which follows a weighted arithmetic mechanism based on the historical nature or cohorts and where they have come in from. So that's been one of the big application, and that has saved a lot of money. Then of course is the sales predictability part of it, which is the right customer. Once the customer comes in as a lead, what's the right pitch to be done, historically mine, and understand what is that, what were those points which really helped in conversion, and how do you segment it, and try to then bring in that predictability, saying that if I have been doing so many calls and so many counseling, so many application submits, so what will be the sale coming tomorrow, day after, and then based on that ensure that the inputs are there. So quite a few applications, and I think in today's world, if you are a digital first company, you can't survive without having a very good footing in data science. I mean, you can survive, but you'll spend a lot of money, is what my sense is. So yeah, so that's the answer for the first question. Now, uh, coming to, so I like the third question more on the advertising and subscription part of it. So probably I will take that out. See, subscription as a business is a reality, and we should understand that that is going to be there, and there will be people who will pick it up because they don't want to see ads. But we should also not forget that half of the people who come in and watch Super Bowl watches it for the ads. So it's not that ads are a bad thing. It is just that the way we do it. In the subscription based business, also, I don't think brands can exist without talking to customers who like subscription. So the way we have been looking at this entire thing is, how do we tell stories alongside the content, and then reach the customer. Now, I mean, your question of whether I mean, advertisement can be figured out as a way to subsidize education. I mean, that's an interesting thought. I've never really thought about it honestly, but yeah. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I will have to think about it, Vivek. Maybe we should talk about this offline. It's an interesting idea. I should see how I can leverage this out. You don't really call it an ad. You can say this is education, and hence you listen to this.
Yeah, actually, and the thing is, see, the way I look at it is right that the first party data is the holy grail for most brands, right? So now the
Yeah.
thing is that this first party data, there's so many complementary things because sometimes what happens is for a person to get a job or to get educated, he needs an overall development, like, and it can be like, let's say put it this way, we talked about celebrity school, right? So you're learning at
Hmm.
one level data sciences, but the other level you're
Hmm.
learning sales. Now, sales is a soft skill,
Hmm.
but every single
Hmm.
person who's going to grow in his career, selling is going to be an
Hmm.
important skill, negotiation will be an important skill. So these soft
Absolutely.
skills you learn
Absolutely.
because whether you're selling to get a job somewhere or selling to a customer or selling to your boss to get an appraisal, these are skill sets which are almost essential in every single career option, right? So at one end, you're going to
Yeah.
learn something which is very, very objective, and then you're going to learn these subjective skill sets, and there is a complementary opportunity of
Hmm.
subsidizing it, right? So both get subsidized with
Yeah.
each other, and there is
Hmm.
probably an opportunity. So again, after this session,
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
talk to Advit
Yeah.
and talk to Arjun. Only Ritesh is left to sell him something. Okay, so I think we are going to be ending a session soon. So I wanted to know some thoughts that in your business, how do you think the whole metaverse, Web 3.0, to a certain extent, blockchain, not for Advit, is integral part of it. How is these new technologies going to impact our businesses? And to future-proof our businesses, are there any thoughts or any things that we are doing as our companies in this space of leveraging it? Because these are exponential technologies, right? Right now, it looks like, 1 in a billion have an Oculus Quest 2, but tomorrow when the price points reduces even further, like this is going to become a part of our lives, right? It's like today when we go out of the house, if we forget our mobile phone, chances are we will come back home even if we are half an hour away to fetch our phone. That used to be there a few years ago for a watch. If somebody would forget their watch, would come back to fetch their watch. Today nobody's going to come back to fetch their watch, but tomorrow I think you're going to forget your augmented reality glasses, because then suddenly the world will be different and you will not be proper to read the menu and directions to places without your glasses, so you'll have to come back to fetch your glasses, right? So if that kind of a world is going to happen, and probably faster than what we imagine, what are we doing with our businesses to prepare for the Web 3.0? Any thoughts anybody has, please share.
Uh,
Mm,
Sure, I'd
start
like to
with,
go in. I mean,
yeah.
because not on My 11 Circle, which is a sports fantasy brand, but at Games 24/7, we also work on Ultimate Games, which is basically kind of a games lab that works on casual games that is targeted to the US market. So we've launched a couple of games there, and we keep on trying new stuff out there. What we've learned not so in the Indian market right now. So we are not advertising based platforms. We are purely uh, real money gaming skill games where we earn our revenue from the subscription sort of. But if you look at the US market, where we are working on a lot of meta based games, there is huge potential that we see. Especially there's a certain segment that we've observed in the US market is very excited for a lot of ultimate games that are meta based. So I would say gaming is very new in India, and obviously right now there is a realization that I spend probably 1,000 2,000 rupees watching a movie or a dinner. I can spend that much. play my favorite game. So that kind of realization is now happening here in India. But then Meta globally is, I think, taken off big, and yeah, we are working with our games lab to something which is targeted to the US market. But yeah, hopefully India should also find its space there, but very new to India, I'd say.
So, Ritesh, I'll share with you
Yeah,
one very
Vivek,
interesting
if I
story. Sorry.
sorry, yeah. Yeah. No, so I was just going to add to that if I can. So when in my previous stint, when I was in Byju's, AR VR was a big thing, at least in the narrative sort of things, right? So we had, education was one of the first use cases all these AR VR developers wanted to work on. So we had worked with a couple of people. See, at that time, what had happened was that it was more like, okay, there is this technology. Let me force fit the entire thing. Maybe because the technology was not uh, well there. So what I observed is that even to learn a very simple concept, right? The amount of work that has to be done at an AR and VR level to explain even a very small thing using that kind of a model, it was just impossible, and people were like they were not really able to see any value to it. So it could be the reason, I mean, the lack of developers, or in other words, lack of having a big company like Facebook supporting something like the way they are supporting Oculus or Metaverse today. uh, the AR/VR never had that kind of takers at that time. That could be the reason why the ecosystem did not develop even a 3D TV. I mean, how many videos did you have at that point in time, right? But looks like currently the situation is different, because after Facebook went out on it, I've at least got three inbound requests where people have asked me, can you do a metaverse course where you can develop the developers for tomorrow? So the way I'm seeing it is, it will start with the education stage, wherein you will work on creating an ecosystem of developers. Once you have these people, that's when the uh, use cases will come in. So it's a wait and watch game for me, in other words. But yeah, very closely seeing where it is going.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
this book
what's
doesn't become, sorry.
yeah,
Uh,
and I
sorry,
think
I
what's
think
going to
this book
happen,
doesn't
Arjun,
become
is
it.
like if you listen to Mark's address, right? What they're doing now is they're creating these engines that make the whole sort of creation very much easier. So let's say
Yep,
the entire hand movement and gestures and translating that. So the next version of Oculus actually takes your facial recognition, and when you're talking and you're smiling, it actually
yep,
takes that receptiveness and transfers it online, right? So
yep,
what's going
yeah.
to happen is
Make
that
it easier.
yeah, so I think it's like how
Make it
Watson and some
easier.
of
Yeah,
these other Microsoft Cognitive Services improve the ability to
yeah,
use AI and machine learning more effectively, and GPT-3 is making creative, etc.
yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing will happen in
yeah,
Meta, where the basic
yeah.
engines will be
No,
there
he has done
as long
it
as
also, right? He,
yeah,
yeah, and he has done it also earlier, right? He is the person who built React, and that is how the front end development moved from a JavaScript to React. So yeah, maybe he will do it, but yeah, I would say that we'll have to first develop have a developer community for it. That is when it will really go viral.
yeah. I think the best way to build that community is the the private equity and the VC guys are now investing in this in a big way. So then
Yeah,
nothing drives progress like money. So more and money being pumped
absolutely.
into blockchain and crypto and metaverse and Web 3.0, the more and more developers will get into it. So, Advit, your views on this whole Web 3.0 and this concept of users owning the network, and whether it's driven by blockchain or crypto, what are your thoughts on it? And are you guys thinking about how do you become the default platform? But in a way, having a platform, it's it's different from uh, a Bitcoin not being a company, right? So the Web 3.0, true Web 3.0, there is no company. So as a platform, what are the thoughts you have on what's happening in the Web 3.0 world, and how does Coin DCX remain relevant?
Right, so essentially, what is happening right now is that we're getting introduced to elements that will be very common, that will be used, right? I mean, you gave the analogy of a mobile, right? But before a mobile, we had a phone, we had a calculator, we had physical games, and we had all the other apps that used to be there, right? So today we are getting introduced to a lot of digital assets. Crypto is one, right? Which is also being used as a token, as a currency inside these ecosystems, right? Many of these ecosystems. That is one. Second, the one that is taking on the world right now is NFT, right? Now, to all of us, NFT might seem like a fad, but this is at a very introductory stage as of now. Right, what is happening is that people are purchasing NFT only as a collectible today. Right, so you can buy an NFT and be proud, say proudly that okay, I have this NFT of say for example Kapil's autograph or anyone's autograph and so on and so forth. But collectible is one use case. There are hundreds of use cases, and also the most important use case will be in Meta. So in Meta, we'll be able to purchase NFTs. So for example, we have this session. We are having this session in a metaverse, right? Over there, you might say that okay, I want to wear something else, right? I want a jacket, right? I want a different background. I want a different surrounding, and all of that. Those will be NFTs, right? And those will be NFTs which you can probably purchase or even rent. Right? So renting is another use case which will come for NFTs. So that is how Web 3.0 is developed. There will be many more elements which I am also not privy to as of now. But once we slowly get used to these elements, then Meta will have these elements over there. Coming to decentralization, essentially over there, it is great, right? What happens is that today, if you want to make a transaction, you can do it without a bank being in between, without other parties being in between. So your transaction costs reduce a lot. So every token, every coin has a different use case. There are use cases which are there for speed. There are use cases which enable you to transact within a few seconds instead of waiting for a few days. So that helps a lot. Of course, there are risks in terms of privacy, and once you lose something, you cannot recover it. But those will get solved over a matter of time. So what we are doing, we are focused on crypto as a we are focused on exchange, right? We are as of now we want to focus on being the exchange where people can come, they can purchase crypto, they can sell crypto, and we are also going global next year. So that we can enable this. That is the focus as of now. As of now, there's no focus on NFTs or Meta. It might come in the future, but not as of now.
Cool. And I think one book you recommended that for the audience will be useful is Token Economics.
Yes.
So whichever people can read this book, they'll give them an idea of how to operate in this decentralized world. And I see Shivani, so I think we're going to get booted out any moment. So on that note, I would like to thank all the panelists, Arjun, Advit, Ritesh, and Rohit. Unfortunately, he had some connectivity issues, but thanks a lot, guys. It was an awesome conversation. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you
much.
so much, Mr. Bhargava, and all our panelists for joining us today and for such an engaging discussion. Another thanks goes out to all our attendees who are here with us today. Thank you so much. We are signing off, and please stay tuned and stay safe.
Okay, my friends. Bye bye.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to fifth edition of Pixels Digital Entertainment, reaching a new peak. My name is Neha Gadi, and I'll be your host for this session. Thank you for joining us. Before we kickstart the discussion, we would like to thank our title partner Woot, Platinum partner Amazon Prime Video, CX partner Zendesk, content delivery partner Limelight Networks, Gold partners Lionsgate Play and Shimaru Entertainment. And now I would like to introduce you to our keynote. We are now we have with us Tarun Kajal, founder and CEO eWorld, speaking on responsible AI, balancing externalities and growth. Over to you, Tarun.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to IMAI to give me this opportunity to talk about a topic that is really close to my heart. Uh, Balancing externalities and growth, responsible AI, responsible social media. Really, all of us are fascinated with what AI and ML can do for us, right? We always talk about how recommendation engines are personalizing the digital experience for everybody today. They're making sure that both from a demand side and a supply side, there is a serious amount of growth that is being delivered to businesses. And our entire thinking is how do we deploy AI ML on an ongoing basis to be able to do one thing, which is personalization at scale. Now, personalization at scale seems like a really good idea, but the problem with personalization at scale is that what do you do when your personalization engine cannot actually differentiate from what is good or bad for the audiences? And why am I saying this, right? You must have read a lot about what is happening with recommendation engines across um, Facebook and across Instagram and many other platforms and companies who are using user behavior, user consumption data to be able to set growth goals for themselves. Now, if I'm a user who is not in such great mental state and have come onto a platform looking for content that matches my mental state, which is slightly depressive, slightly pensive, slightly on the edge, and I start my user journey on the platform by consuming content like that. What is the content that will get recommended by machines and by AI post watching what my consumption habits are? More likely than not, you're going to get more and more depressive content, more and more cynical content, more and more almost on the edge suicidal content recommended to you. And AI, unfortunately, is not being trained in semantic or collaborative engines to be able to differentiate between the quality of content, the context of the content, what the context of the user is, and how much and how far should you take somebody down the rabbit hole. This is the real problem of where AI is deployed to be able to personalize your experience, but unfortunately could actually create a huge challenge for most poor mental state users in the long run. Now, over the years, people believe that social media has allowed us to build connections. Social media has allowed us to be able to find our friends. Social media has also allowed us to find content that is best suited for us. As most of the social media that is run on AI ML has recommended both connections as well as recommended content to other people, as well as recommended content to us, it's it's unable to draw the line on what is good or bad for us. There was a really nice BBC study done, and I recommend that most of you guys read it. The title of the study is "I Get Abused and Threatened Online. Why can't it do stuff?" And it talks about the level of misogyny and the level of trolling that women get on the platform. on any social media platform, which is far ahead than what men were. And the way BBC and the report and the journalist has broken this down is that they've looked at how user behavior on the other side, which is the guys who troll, who are trolling and are putting out misogynistic comments, that user and his recommendations lead him to doing this. So if a user engages more with some kind of content, is continuously putting out hate messages, hate crime, misogynistic messages, unfortunately today, AI will recommend that user more of such content where that user has more opportunity to be able to put more hate on his or her timeline. So one thing is that the AI is measuring content consumption, but the other thing is that AI is continuously measuring your engagement levels and then recommending to you what are the kind of posts that you should engage with more, which are similar to the kind of posts that you engage with. So what the missing point on this entire AIML journey is that what is the quality and the context of that engagement? You cannot possibly encourage people to be able to do more and more disturbing engagement, more and more disturbing comments, and encourage them with more and more content where they can explore their misogyny even more. These are the kind of things that AI tends to forget, and unfortunately, AI models are not increasingly trained about because they are trained around one single thing, which is increasing growth, increasing session time, increasing retention. At what cost and of whom and for how long are not the questions that today's social media and the AI algorithms are answering very well. I'll give you a very simple example. Should you at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the night continue to work through your algorithm and keep recommending to users more and more such kind of content, or should you start to put a night shutdown option on responsible social media through your algorithm? Is it possible to be able to look at content moderation by day part? Because it's now documented that most amount of trolling and misogyny happens at a certain day part in the night with most, you know, typical user personas. How do you really moderate using AI disturbing reactions to users posts and unnecessary trolling that happens around women? How do you really solve for creating the entire false sense of self-worth, right? And a lot of platforms which started off as, platforms by photographers where, you only looked at beauty as a filter, unfortunately forgot that, perpetuating an entire ecosystem where your self-worth and identity is getting measured by how pretty or how interesting your picture looks can lead to people finding real mental health issues because they worry about their own, their own self-worth and their own individuality. So some of these goals which are purely set around and increasingly around more and more engagement, more and more advertising to be served to these users, more and more session time need to be really looked at to saying, hey, are we only just looking at scrolling? Are we looking at average session length, or are we also looking at emotions, or are we also looking at the way people should behave and the way people should act? Are we looking at action prediction? Are we looking for models which can go deep into mood and personality, or are we so singularly minded around our growth goal? Psychology, human psychology, its behavior needs to now start to come into technology. And from my all my work at Kellogg with my digital transformation course and my recommendation in AI course, I think the one thing that I learned with 2 years at Kellogg was that now is the time where responsible AI and responsible social media can actually put a halt to some of this rabbit hole effects that we've created over the years with social media. The other thing that we must put our effort behind is fake news, fake propaganda, and building truth as the hallmark to most content that comes onto these platforms. So, are we willing to put our hand up? Are we willing to put a negative list, which even reduces engagement on the platform but keeps people safe? Are we encouraging people to be able to moderate their own social media and gaming usage? And are we willing through AI to encourage genuine behavior and even physical offline relationships with people? Are we willing to be able to solve for self-worth, or at least build an awareness that you are not your social media identity? Are we willing to be able to limit usage even though it may hurt our business, but in the long run will keep people more and more healthy? These are questions that we can deploy AI and ML very, very successfully towards. I think positive reinforcement, persuasive technology for positive thinking needs to, and persuasive design needs to be used in a manner that users today can find themselves more happier, more healthier, and in a good mental shape, rather than AI leading people down a repetitive amount of recommendation that can hurt your mental health. So these are some of the topics I really wanted to talk about. As we go on to build Eve, which is a responsible social platform for women, where we want to, get women away from so much of this misogyny and trolling and the kind of propaganda that is gender biased, hugely gender biased. These are questions that we've raised to ourselves, and I'm hoping and increasingly, happy that the world at large, the the entire U.S. Senate, as well as the scrutiny that the world is putting both AI, ML, as well as social media under, is going to at some level lead us to answer some of these questions much better. So I'm not really cynical about AI. I think AI can be deployed to good use. And personalization is a good thing to do, but it should be done within bounds, and we should let people really be human beings rather than people modeled over AI. Thank you so much, and thank you, IMAI, to give me this opportunity. Back to you, Neha.
Thank you so much, Tarun. It was genuinely a very, very, interesting and a very informative talk. So thank you so much for sparing your time for this, and thank you, audience, for being here. Stay tuned for the next session and stay safe. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the last fireside chat of the day. We would like to begin by thanking you all for being part of fifth edition of Pixels Digital Entertainment reaching a new peak. We would also like to thank our partner, title partner Woot, platinum partner Amazon Prime Video, CX partner Zendesk, content delivery partner Limelight Networks, gold partners Lionsgate Play, and Shimaru Entertainment. Without any further ado, let me introduce you to our guest, Mr. Ali Hussain. He is the CEO from Eros Now, and our moderator, Mr. Gaurav Lagate. He is the Senior Assistant Editor from the Economic Times. I would request all the delegates to keep posting their question in the chat box, and the panel will address few selected questions. Over to you, Mr. Lagate.
Thank you, Shivani, and hi, Ali. Hello and warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for taking out time to join this session. I'm sure Ali will make this worth your while. The theme for Pixel this year is digital entertainment reaching a new peak. And the biggest question that comes to mind is what is this peak? Let's consider a few numbers. Global players see India as a big market with around 1.3 billion consumers. Today, we have 600 million internet users. Some feel it's a 100 million paying user market, give or take. And analysts project 230 million paying users in the next 5 years, which is around the same level we have today in the US, though ARPUs, or what we call average revenue per user, will remain much less. So my question to you, Ali, is how big is the OTT market in India actually today, both AVOD and SVOD?
No, thank you, Gaurav. It's lovely speaking to you and connecting after a long gap. I may thank you once again for having Gaurav and myself on stage. It's a privilege, as always, every year to be a part of Pixels. As Gaurav and me were catching up backstage, we'll do a good job to kind of keep this informed. We don't know if we can entertain you as much because you've got Bhuvan Baum on the other panel. So we'll try and do everything we can to keep you guys hooked onto the screen at least for the next 25-30 minutes. So, Gaurav, jumping into your question, I think overall, like essentially, I would break the market into two parts, right? And as you kind of rightly identified it, one is more in terms of what is the larger universe of the paid subscriber universe, and second is what are kind of like the online video customers that are there across the country, right? So it's estimated around on a monthly active basis, we're doing about 400, 420 million kind of online video or internet video users of sorts, which is connected across both desktops, smart TVs, as well as the handheld devices. The paid user universe is a little bit of an amalgamation because the paid user universe sits between what we call is either direct pay or bundle pay, right? The difference between the direct pay and the bundle pay, for example, is either I'm going on to a Disney Hotstar or Eros Now or Netflix and directly subscribing to the service, or I'm getting a package service through my Airtel connection or my Geo connection, right? So some form of direct or indirect payment, you're right, the overall universe is anticipated to be anywhere between, I would say 80 to 100 million users, which are paying in some form or the other as far as online video is concerned. Gaurav, should I continue? I'm just saying the question was what was the set of the market, like the
Uh,
market sizing in
Sorry, I
general, right?
think I lost you there. So, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Gaurav.
Just one minute. Sorry, I think there is. Ah, okay. No. So, okay, coming to today morning, when Netflix announced a sharp reduction in subscription plans in India, does this mean that India is and will remain a low ARPU market?
No, so I think a lot of our learnings have to come from television, right? Gaurav, we've got anywhere between a 220, 240 million kind of household market as far as television is concerned, with an ARPU, as you said, average revenue per user of sitting anywhere around the $4 mark, right? So essentially, that is the elasticity of payment as compared to the US, where the ARPU's range is anywhere between $60 and $80 per month. So there is a large deviation between what ARPUs are in India versus what are ARPUs in the US, as an example. Right? And we tend to get benchmarked a lot in terms of what we call as mature ARPUs. So we've always known that India will be a price conscious market. We've always known that, especially at the early days, a lot of sampling and adoption and inertia with reference to digital payments exists. So I think what Netflix is trying to do is after their, I think this is an assumption, obviously Netflix will be able to answer this question better, and I've got some friends sitting there that can help us with more specifics, but the assumption is that they've hit one level of penetration, and to ensure they're able to better penetrate tier two, tier three, or probably become more of a desi product, they're basically looking at how do they expand the larger universe. So historically, which is very unique, is in the US, if you've known, Netflix has actually increased the prices, right? They were earlier at $8, $10, and then $14 in terms of pricing. India is amongst the few market in the world, and this showcases the significance and the importance of a market like India, as you said, right? Because it's potentially the case where India could be the world's largest online video market in terms of both paid subscribers, unique viewers, as well as time spent. So Netflix has kind of showcased the importance of a country like India by saying that we're willing to change our kind of global strategy to look at deviant pricing to figure out how do we expand the market in a big way. So I think it's a good step, in general, very encouraging for the business because that many more subscribers would eventually get added onto the bandwagon.
Right. Okay. Okay. And as we have discussed in the past, that OTT is just 3 to 4 years old, and when international players as well as domestic actually started investing substantially in original content. But what roadmap do you see for the sector in say the next 3 years? How it's going to shape up?
So I think a bunch of different things is going to happen, Gaurav. So one is some of the maturity of the global ecosystem. Disney, for example, or what Peacock is trying to do, or even what Paramount Plus or Viacom CBS is trying to do. All their strategies are essentially about 12 to 18 months old, right? Including Warner Media being part of AT&T first, and now Discovery and Warner trying to figure out and get a footing in terms of a merged entity business. So I think there is a lot of, I would say, amalgamation of these companies in the US, which have significant investments in India or which will want to have significant investments in India, right? So, over the next 18 to 24 months, once the dust settles in their core markets, they will want to look at expansion, they will want to look at paid subs. And if India is a top three, top five market, this is an area that these companies will continue to think in terms of what their strategy for these markets will be. So, I think these three things are going to happen, and this is again a leap of faith. One is you're going to see a good ecosystem develop between this kind of tripod of the global tech companies like the Googles, Facebooks, Apples, maybe even Microsoft of the world, trying to figure out what is their play within the video business. Number two is some of, I call them the major studios, whether it is the Paramount Pluses, Disney's. Disney already has a significant kind of relationship with Star and a local ecosystem, but how does that local ecosystem for them transform over the period of the next 3 to 5 years is going to be interesting after they genuinely kind of close the merger. So how do these players and also some of the Indian incumbents, right? How we've got Eros now, we've got Sun, we've got Z. Sony is globally a studio, but Sony is a very large local play. Viacom, for example, how do the local players, in terms of the broadcast incumbents, some of the other incumbents, create a significant kind of force? So there is going to be a combination of these three kind of forces that come together. Three things that I would love to see.
Okay.
This is not so much about what's going to happen. This is like my wish list for the ecosystem and the business. The one is that we make content that is globally recognized, right? I would love to hear about India's Squid Games, and I would love to hear about how do we develop stories that kind of traverse the world. It's a wishful thinking, but we would love for Indian stories to be more global in nature, right? We've seen this with shows like Narcos first, and we've seen it with shows like Foda, and we've seen it now with South Korean shows. How do we make Indian shows a global phenomenon? The second area is that India has become one of the largest kind of developmental centers for technology, right? And when I say India, I'm not just talking about Indians in India, but Indians even in the US are actually contributing to significant technology development. So, how do we kind of contribute to how technology plays a large role in the video or the entertainment ecosystem? And then the third wish list is that how do we innovate, right? So it's not just about what we're doing today. This
Correct.
eventually would get into development in the immersive experiences in AR, VR, or development in getting into gaming or certain new technologies that are kind of coming up. So how do we kind of be ahead of the curve in terms of those developments? So I feel in these three areas, potentially at different paces, I think India as a country will play a significant role in the global ecosystem.
Right. The 3 points that you made actually will go deeper in all those one by one. First, as you said, content. OTT players have helped immensely in the distribution of content globally. We have seen a lot of foreign content. I mean, as you rightly pointed out, not just English, but Spanish, Korean, and other languages is now accessible to Indian viewers, right? So they are not dependent on TV and not dependent on piracy, thankfully, anymore. But do you think that Indian storytellers, yes, the content is going out. Yes, Amazon, Netflix, everyone is talking about taking the content to outsiders. But do you think that Indian storytellers and content creators will also be able to play a meaningful role in global ecosystem? What needs to change? Because Indian content is still not being up there, even if it's available. It's just still uh, the diaspora, which it is being provided to or offered to.
No, I think I completely agree with you, Gaurav. But you have to understand, like before you talk about, the vision saying that is Indian content ever going to be global, right? Now let's look at why certain content does become global, right? When you look at South American content, I'm not saying South America is a small universe, but it's not a massive universe by itself. You started off by saying, like, when you look at Fauda, which was essentially a show out of Israel, I think, or you look at South Korea, they're small economies by itself.
Israel.
So for them, export becomes a big opportunity for them to maximize revenue. So if you look at even Chinese content providers make a lot of money within China, but they're also making a lot of money through syndication or through distribution outside of China. But when you're dealing with a market which is in 3-4 years about 100 million direct or indirect paid online video market with a 400 million universe of video users that are already connected, you're trying to target that how do I capture the imagination of the 400 million people first. So I think as a priority, because our market size is so big already, like the US does not have 400 million online video customers, right? That's just the harsh reality of the situation. So how do you kind of capture the imagination and become a box office success, if I can use that terminology, with 400 million people? How can you get each of those 400 million people to watch your film or watch your show? That itself is potentially the biggest show that you've ever made. Right? That's just the harsh reality of it. But I think what's going to happen is two or three things. One is the way we have developed the format of storytelling with the writer's room, with multiple contributions, defining story arcs that are non-linear, is already getting more global in nature. I think it is about identifying a topic which is one is actually first is it's being clear that the story is more global or the story is more catered to India. So I think the strategy needs to be very clear in terms of the fact that the aspiration is to make a more global show. I think a lot of the aspirations so far has been catered to a fairly large Indian viewing audience. Second is maybe even collaboration with certain writers, co-producers, or even showrunners with the West, right? So what are the learnings that actually are there in the West that you can amalgamate with learnings from India to genuinely make? And then essentially that comes into some of the softer aspects of the writing, softer aspects of the characters, profiles, and some of the softer aspects of the casting. How do you do that to genuinely put a global show together? So I think there will be, you will see this in 22 and 23, that there will be aspirations. And also now the budgets are not necessarily a major constraint, right? Like because of global platforms, you're not dealing with the fact that the box office elasticity is 10 million, 20 million, $30 million, or 200 crores, 300 crores. So how do we make a show that expands the audience a little more? Couple of the platforms have indicated that they have the intent to look at more global content, and there will be then ways for that to manifest into an actual production, which should happen in the next couple of years.
No, but as you said, the budget should not be a problem, and budget won't be a problem for say 3 or 4 players. That now we have what 60 OTT apps today. How and there are much smaller apps who may not have those kind of budgets. What should they do?
No, so I don't think it's everybody needs to make a show that needs to go global, right? It's possible that there could be a Bengali show which might appeal to audiences because of the fact that it might not check off all these boxes. It might just be content that travels. Nobody can predict what global appetite or global consumption is. And again, I'm going to go back to this classic example that nobody could predict that Squid Games would be a global hit or a success the way it was, right, for example. So I think there could be 60 OTT apps, there could be 80 OTT apps or 100 OTT apps, right? It's kind of like the television boom with 800 TV channels that existed back in the day. Eventually, everybody needs to work to their core strength, right? If their expertise is understanding short form content or understanding more telenovela style programming, which is slice of life programming, you need to focus on that. if your programming is more skewed to understanding how you cater to regional languages, either in Malayalam or Telugu or Tamil, because you have a pulse of that audience, you maybe focus on that. So I think everybody needs to work to their strength, needs to understand of how do they cultivate those audience, develop the habit, and however small or big it is valuable because you're developing a core audience over a period of time, right? So I think each OTT service needs to work to what their core strengths are, continue to stay focused on that, and obviously the economics will then define what your strategy and execution looks
But considering that, on an average, user will have only 3 to 4 OTT apps in his or her mobile, and maybe five. So how will you ensure that user keeps your app and keeps coming back to it? Isn't that a biggest challenge?
like. So, Gaurav, I personally believe that the fundamental difference between the typical kind of internet universe or the app universe and ours is slightly different, right? Our business is an hybrid of the television business meets the cinema business meets the internet or the mobile business, right? It's a hybrid of these three things kind of coming together. So there is a lot of work and investments happening on technology where you can actually directly from the interface, right? And this is also happening on the mobile platform where from the interface you could be having 9 or 10 apps behind the interface, but through things like superlative machine learning and computer generated algorithms, you can actually look at how do you deep dive that wall of the app directly more into the content that you like, whilst keeping certain aspects of the brand attribute in mind. So things like voice search, things like deep discovery. There's a lot of work happening where through the launcher you're able to kind of access. So whilst the average right now is anywhere between 2 to 2.5 apps per customer, including significant amount of uninstalls, but I believe the so-called broader word of aggregators will actually play a larger role in looking at how do you get higher consumption and penetration for mid-tail to long-tail consumption of content in general, and develop those smaller niches or those larger niches over a period of time.
Right, right, right. So one thing that you pointed out was innovation, VR, gaming. Younger audience are showing more inclination towards gaming or short form videos, which is why we have seen a few players adding these two to their offering. Well, we cannot call them super apps yet, but is that the future? Will we see more of such kind of amalgamation?
See, I think the broader universe is still entertainment, right? If I'm just creating a large bucket around the broader universe is entertainment, right? In our word, in business and in kind of parlance, trade parlance, we use words like SWOD and AWOD. You know, when you boil it down to the customer, it's literally, is it free? Can I access it? Do I need to pay for it? And what is my passion point? Like gaming or game influences are my passion point, is the example, right? So I think there is a cross section because when you look at the mass market, right? I'm saying the mass market customer used to watch a general entertainment channel, used to also buy a Lux soap, used to probably buy a shampoo. So essentially, there is going to be a cross section of audiences that overlap. So philosophically, the belief is that overall short form video, long form video, paid video, and certain aspects of gaming creators will be mass market in the future. So when you have a captive audience, it is an opportunity for you to experiment in terms of what your adjacencies are. So if my core audience loves X, what is my adjacencies? Because today, if you're charging a $10 service or $15 service, how do you continue to be relevant to drive value for that $10-15 over a period of time? So I think there is the aggregators, specifically the likes of Google, Microsoft, Amazon, have a significant kind of investment in the larger ecosystem, right? Whether it is next day delivery, whether it is Prime services, music, bunch of other services that are linked with it, or could be other services. So how do you kind of through the funnel or through a telco ISP funnel create an aggregation where there is deep level of customer understanding, so you're able to curate content that they like, which could be either paid, either free, or either in terms of preference on gaming, right? So I think gaming still is at a very, very early stage in a country like India. Whilst the West has seen significant development of mid-core AAA gaming, in India we've only seen really PUBG become the real phenomenon in the mid-core space, where everything is kind of more skewed to the casual gaming space or the the other fantasy and the real money gaming spaces. So I think there is going to be an evolution of what gaming ecosystem in India looks like. Now, whether that audience overlaps with the entertainment audience, time will tell. But that's definitely one of the things you said. It's a more of a younger phenomenon, but it's about how do you encapsulate that entire bucket of entertainment.
So there is one question from the audience. Mr. Mehul Agarwal has asked, is Eros looking to expand OTT app to include gaming as one of its areas for consumer engagement?
So I think right now what Eros is trying to do is be very focused to its core, right? It's kind of what we can do, right? So we come with an orientation of working on films. We've done a lot of original series that have also focused on a more film-centric approach. I think we'll continue to stay focused on that. Gaming, we've done certain experiments with even doing like Bajirao Mastani games, more casual games, more engagement-driven factors. But right now, because the business itself is so intense, as we know, our focus is very clearly is how do we invest in content, how do we invest in technology, how do we invest in um, core services that drive value to the offering of driving value back to our subscribers.
Great. So now coming to the new flavor of the tech world, metaverse. Do you think OTTs will also have to embrace, and this will also head towards a creating a metaverse kind of a situation?
I think so. I think that it is one of the natural evolution. It's almost like your experience right now. Like for example, we're doing this conference in almost like a 2D environment, right? It's a flat screen video
Yeah.
experience. Eventually, these conferences will happen where we will be physically present, actually physically omnipresent in a room. We won't be in the room, but our virtual avatars might be present in the room, right? We might still not look as good as Bhuvan Bam, but I'm just saying that we'll be physically omnipresent in the room as an example. So I think I think the fact is that whether it is the business of these kind of events or entertainment in general or video content in general, the next evolution is going to be immersive. The question is what kind of content will work in immersive, what kind of experiences will work in immersive, what is truly an immersive experience versus just being like an arm's length away. So I think content companies to be able to provide your television viewing experiences will become immersive in nature. So the metaverse essentially is about having a more of a three-dimensional experience with content. It's where the logic of Internet of Things is born. It's the logic of how do you create that kind of vehicle to be more engaged with the customer. So I believe that the business of OTT or the business of video in general is just the stepping stone to eventually getting into the metaverse. And I think a lot of companies in the next 18 to 24 months will be making early experiments, early investments about what their metaverse or multiverse strategy should be. How do they look at things like gaming, and what is the kind of cross section of entertainment meets gaming meets metaverse. So I think that will you'll see some early kind of experiments happen very soon.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And recently we had the new IT rules and content guidelines. So directionally, do these guidelines help creators or limit the scope of creativity?
So I think the belief is that guidelines are good because eventually, beyond a certain point, they give the opportunity back to the creator to be responsible for their creative output, right? I think beyond a certain point, it is important for us to be responsible as an ecosystem back to our customers. The important is creating a balance with reference to that. And I think that the IMAI themselves and a lot of other stakeholders that are involved with the ecosystem are working very closely to ensure that we are giving enough creative expression and creative freedom to the creators while still kind of holding them responsible for what the output and the relationship with the customers. And Gaurav, you got to remember that the audience is also evolving as we go along. This ecosystem of what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago from television has also evolved over a period of time. Technologies are changing. You will have significant amount of technology controls, even in parental controls, to make sure that there aren't significant risk of younger audiences being exposed to incorrect content because hopefully mature audiences can make better choices in terms of what's right versus what's wrong. So I think including all those evolutions, I think the ecosystem is headed in the right direction. And the point I'm trying to make is that this will not be an absolute answer. This is also something that will continue to evolve over a period of time.
Oh, fair enough. And one thing which the industry has been asking for a long time, but never coming reaching a middle ground, is the viewership metrics or what measurement. So we have Bark for telling us what is it that the Indian viewers are watching on TV, but there is no third-party measurement for OTT or a single currency. What is your view on need of a measurement currency which is uniform for all OTTs?
So I think again a lot of this will happen with the maturity of the ecosystem. I remember before Bark there was TAM, before TAM there was some sort of rudimentary measurement system in place even for television. So I think television kind of is a good, great example at scale where there was more of a need from an advertiser's perspective, looking at what is the reach that they are being able to drive through a lot of the vehicle platforms, which were essentially a lot of the channels, right? Again, we go back to where we started off with. That this business is only maybe 2 3 years really mature. There is a lot of evolution it'll go through. I think there will be some sort of standardized metrics about measurement. It is about how you're able to understand what are the objectives, what are the use cases. I think there are certain developments that will happen over a period of time to standardize some matrices. Who is that information released to and how is that information used is time will decide. But I think there will definitely be some areas where, again, leveraging technology, you will be able to create some standard matrices to measure the penetration and the affinity of certain content versus the other.
Hello. Sorry, I'm sorry. I think I got disconnected.
No worries, you're back now.
Sorry. Okay. Thanks. Uh, okay. So you were saying, middle.
No, I was just saying that there will be certain standard practices, and there will be because there is a lot of technology that will be embedded, right? Essentially, your distribution pipe is happening either through a CDN or it's happening through. So even Bark to some extent is limited because it does it through like a centralized user set.
Yeah.
TAM was also limited because it was a user set and then it was an extrapolated kind of mechanism, right? But because you're essentially using cloud or you're using CDN for delivery, there will be intermediary forms of measurement about what has higher affinity both as a service as well as in terms of time spent on content. So I think over a period of time there'll be standard metrics. What's important to understand that what is the objective of that matrix? Like what is that data going to be used for in terms of information? I think defining those are more important, and hence then backward, what is the solution we need to work on as an ecosystem?
Fair enough. Fair enough. And one question, which again, analysts also talk about, that there will be some sort of consolidation. While we are seeing the same in the traditional media, globally also we are seeing Warner, AT&T, here Disney, Fox, now Sony and Z are in final stages of merger. Do you think that the same will happen in the OTT space also? And finally, it will be what, a market for three, market for four, along with the long tail niche, or there's a market for say 10 players.
So I think just sorry, one correction, Gaurav. I think the consolidation didn't happen for television. The consolidation, television businesses were mature and existed for years, right? The consolidation, if you think about it, of whatever is happening, right? I've spent some time on Disney's analyst calls. I've spent some time on what Discovery and Warner Media are trying to do. A lot of this, the principal objective of the strategic alignment was actually OTT. So digital was the reason why a lot of these kind of M&A transactions happened, because it's almost like how do we get into a slightly more mature market around the world, and it's better done together rather than in isolation, right? Like it's how do you fight the world together of sorts. So I think that was the reason. So the answer to your question is, has digital consolidation uh, digital is the reason why they started consolidating. I would like to predict that even Z Sony, if that deal was to happen, or in the next few weeks or months, one of the primary reason is Z and Sony existed as individual television companies for more than a couple of decades, right? But the fact that the consolidation is happening is because how do we make a stronger footprint on the digital business together, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons, or one of the reasons why they might have considered this kind of amalgamation. Um, the answer is, I think, beyond a certain point, as all businesses, right? We've seen this in commerce, we've seen this in payments. I foresee to be maybe like a best of 6 8 player market, right? This is not going to be a long tail market in general, because essentially it's not just about the cost of content, the cost of CAC, the cost of global distribution is not it's an expensive proposition in general. So I believe in the short term, very similar to TV, you're going to have close to about multiple plethora of niche channels develop, which will have high affinity audiences. Then it's about how do you kind of look at which strategies work together for this kind of potential collaboration to happen in the future. So I still believe it's going to be a bigger market than some of the others, but the telcos have narrowed down to 3 4 players. Television eventually narrowed down to maybe 5 6 players, if so. I believe this will be a 6 to 8 player market. It's just that because there is a larger ecosystem that is interested in this space other than purely video or purely tech.
Great. Great. Thank you, Ali. I think our time is up. Shivani is there, and it's a pleasure talking to you. Over to you, Shivani.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Mr. Hussain, for joining us today. And a special thanks to our audience for joining us today. We are signing off. Thank you so much, everyone. Please stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Hello. Yeah. Yeah.
A very good evening to everyone. I am your host for the session, Ritika Pota from IMEI. Welcome to the panel discussion on using big data and AI to understand viewers. We would like to begin by thanking you all for being a part of the fifth edition of Pixels, digital entertainment reaching a new peak. We would like to thank our partners, title partner Wood, platinum partner Amazon Prime Video, CX partner Zendesk, content delivery partner Limelight Networks, gold partner Lionsgate Play and Shimaru Entertainment. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to a distinguished set of leaders. We have Vani Garg, founder Console, who will be moderating today's session. Adolphe Preudel, co-founder and CEO of Crossroad Media. Dr. Ruby Boyam, CEO and founder Talamus. Himanshu Sharma, co-founder Devnathri, and Dr. Prashant Pansare, founder and CEO IntelliMent Group Rubyscape. I would request all the delegates to kindly post their questions on chat box and Q&A. Our panelists will answer them at the end of the session. Over to you, Vani. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika. Thank you so much. Uh, very excited to be part of this amazing panel. And all of you being industry veterans, I'm looking forward to enriching and very learnful session. We're talking about everything exciting today, which is about data, which is about AI, and my favorite topic, which is about customers and how these three are going to come together and what they are doing here. A lot of noise around OTT, especially in the last 2 years. And you know what, 40 plus maybe OTTs in the country and growing every day, the new ones coming in. And you know, 25% of India's population is on OTT now, and that is the kind of excitement which is getting built in India and across the globe as much. And especially, pandemic has accelerated this growth completely. So I think and we have been talking about data and AI and all of this. I want to pass this question, and it is for all of you. And maybe we can start with Dr. Prashant, you, to tell us that how important is in today's transformation AI's use and data's use, especially for the OTT sector.
Oh, yes, absolutely. First of all, thanks for inviting me to be part of this August gathering. Though virtual, we certainly would have looked forward to meet in person. I also would like to, thank all the members on the panel, quite distinguished guests from the cross borders as well. Uh, Today, what is happening is digital transformation is happening everywhere. And last, almost 18 months, what we've seen is the historic pandemic followed by the global lockdown and the economic slowdown. This lockdown has actually sprung digital transformation uh, much more faster than what we would have otherwise anticipated, right? The spirit of humanity cannot stop even if the world is being stopped. And if you look at the healthcare industry, food, agriculture industry, as we always say famously in a Bollywood language in India, roti kapda makan, these are basic essential commodity. Now we are adding some more things to it, right? So digital, as we say, data is a new oil and connectivity is an oxygen. So these are becoming life essentials. And what is happening is that if you are a pharma company or you're a high tech company, your plants needs to keep working. So IoT, Industry 4.0, all of these are actually becoming reality of the day. So how you can have the modern plants, smart city and smart factories which are digitized. And what is important to understand is that when we talk about digital transformations, data democratization is at the core. And how you are being able to really unpackage the value of data, or if how you're being able to leverage on the net data worth is actually becoming the key differentiating aspect. And OTT has become probably the game changer now. If I have to speak about, say, for example, education industry in India, has actually progressed at least 10 years fast forward compared to where it would have otherwise grown, because that industry was never ready. But in less than 3 months, we saw right from the primary, secondary schools, the higher education, as well as private tutors getting on the Zoom calls and using mobile internet and all of that, suddenly completely changing the way they connect, right? And how the business continues as usual. So what has happened is, just imagine, probably the scenario which you would have otherwise think, a scene in a Bollywood movie where we're doing certain things virtually, digitally, right? So today, if you want to celebrate your birthday of your loved one, a family, you want to take them out for a dinner and for a good movie, and then do some shopping and enjoy the celebration, right? Now how are you doing this in the digital virtual world during the lockdown? So you simply go on
Zoom.
Swiggy or Zomato, you order your favorite food, you go to
Yes.
cakes and flowers and order the cake, and then you are going on a Netflix and watching a favorite movie on each individual screens, even if you're sitting in the same room or different rooms, and then you are gifting your loved ones the vouchers, or probably the gift using maybe Amazon or a Flipkart. Now that's OTT for you, right? The spirit of humanity is not going to be stopped even if you are locked down in your own homes. And thanks to technology, which has given, not only an option, but actually the
the way of life. And hence I said, today connectivity is an oxygen, and OTTs thrive on that, the connectivity. Uh, a lot to say on this, but let me hold on to my remarks because we have some other eminent panel members as well, and I want to be fair with them.
Yeah, some very important points here, democratization and of data, and we'll come back to that. So, Ruby, over to you. How important is personalization in media world?
So it's crucial. That's the TLDR. Okay.
Yeah.
If you think about, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the content world was completely different. I mean, the amount of if I go 15, but that's not go too far, right? I mean, traditionally, users were, consuming data or consuming content in TV content by just checking what is on the TV guide, right? That was back in the age with linear channels. Now, in the last years, even before OTT got hyped, the video on demand started, which changed the consumption patterns of the users, and now with the rise of OTT, this just got much bigger and much stronger. Now, the thing is that you have, and there is a paradox here. Now, today you have much more options and much more shows, or uh, uh, which are available for you to watch at night, for example. But it's also much harder to find the thing that you're interested in. And it's a paradox because when you have an order of magnitude less TV shows, you knew what you wanted to watch. Now, this is because you're overwhelmed with the amount of options. And this is where it's crucial to have a personalization or a prediction platform that will help you target the right content. And this is just from the user side. If you're looking from the enterprise side, they have so much more options to gain more revenue or to give a better service or to focus on their own series with the help of personalization. And also, I can talk about this more and more, but I think I will give the stage for
Yes,
the other panel members.
yes, we'll build on it as we go along. Very important points, right? More options, so difficult to find as well, and we'll probably come back to you. So Himanshu, you were doing completely different thing about translations, and I think that's really kind of the in game, especially India having so many languages, right? And you would have that number. And so, what is your view, and where is your vision coming from in terms of personalization, and how important it is for the Indian market?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me for this. And I'm totally not from OTT industry for sure, but I know data and the number of data which require, what points we require to get users and what all those things. So I would like to start that. First of all, I'll tell what my background is. We help business to localize at scale. We have built our own machine translation engine based on neural machine translation with machine learning, and we help companies to go local for Indian languages. As far as OTT is concerned, OTT is revolutionizing the dynamics of entertainment, media consumption, and viewing experience like never before. As Dr. Prashant said that now in COVID, we after COVID, we do see a spike in digital platforms and people adopting themselves to use them, and then digital platform cater to the diversity of taste and preference of audiences, including the vernacular experience. So, which drawing a bigger and wider audience base for advertisers to target in OTT. So consumer these days are more focused on chasing the content. On a factual note, we have seen that 74% of subscriber, in fact, just sign up for a particular series to a OTT platform. So people are moving according to their content preferences, and digital platforms are immersed with data on user behavior, backed by artificial intelligence that decides on how the audience is going to like, react to the advertising content, and etc. I think if to stand out in market, it is very important to personalize your user experience, I must say.
Yes, thanks, Himanshu, for those comments. Coming to you, Adolf, we heard the word crucial here. We said it's important. There are choices. We are spoiled. So, what is your view? Since you've been working with the media industry for so long, so what is your view on how important it is for building a superior customer experience?
I can just underline that it is crucial, and I think not only from our point of view, and it's really a pleasure to be with you here as all distinguished persons together here on the panel. So thanks for that. And looking back, you know that IBC was also cancelled by COVID, and although we all do here fantastic technology to allow personalization, it's always the question, are the gatekeepers ready for personalization, and what is their view on actually how much personalization will help them? We can show it in our labs, we can prove the uptakes are enormous, but if the industry is not ready, and we have seen this in targeted advertising value chains for many, many years, that targeted advertising was just blocked by the value chains not being ready. But when we look at the panel I watched recently, where there was Netflix, Vincent Auciat, and there was Peter Fairford, who is Vice President Entertainment Products at Liberty Global. And the final question on that panel was, what is the big thing in the next 5 years? And Peter answered on that, we need to get personalization into the user interface exactly because there is the flood of entertainment content. And if you don't bring this choice back down to a human consumable way, uh, you will not be able to make the customer happy despite having the access to all of the content. And I think that goes back to the paradox of choice that Ruby mentioned. So even if a supermarket, and that's a very famous test, if you put a lot of things on the shelf, a lot of people, and that was a test that it was marmalades. If you have like 50 different choices of marmalades, people come and uh, look at them, but they don't buy. If you have like a choice of six, fewer people come, but the overall turnover is higher. So it's really crucial to put the right things in front of the people.
Right. Thanks a lot for those comments. So I have a question to you, Ruby. That does AI really capture micro trends? What I watch in the morning, and it'll be true for many users, right? What I watch in the morning is different than what I watched in the evening, or it's different when I'm on a smart TV versus when I'm on my own mobile, or I'm sharing time with family. There's so many dynamics when it comes to OTT content, and does AI really capture that kind of micro trends? How does it
Yeah.
work? Is Yeah,
So yeah,
it's
so
about
you're
that.
saying AI is something very general, right? You need the
Yeah.
right technology or the right algorithms within AI.
Yes.
And but the real question, yes, this is something that is currently being done, and I think we could. I would separate your question to two things because you mentioned micro trends and you mentioned
Yes.
like viewing on different devices,
Yes.
and
Yes.
this is actually two different things, and both are applied by AI algorithms. Now, to be able to capture the different behavior over a device is something that is done, we're doing, I know other companies are also doing, and it's super important, right? Because you have a viewing pattern for your TV at night. You have maybe for your mobile where you're on the go or you're on the bus, and maybe even on your web browser.
Yeah.
So from an AI perspective, at least this is how we model it, we treat the device as a different signal, right? And this is something that you add to the AI algorithms, and they need to learn what is the right ratio, what is the behavior between these different signals. And for example, another different signal which go along the device is the time of the day, right? Because you might be watching several type of content at night on one device and then different content, I know, like sports late at night, or and comedy at the afternoon. You need to capture the right time and the right device, and you need to do all that in real time, because, and this is where I'm going to the first part is you mentioned the micro trends, because an a static AI model can learn the behavior, but it also needs to adapt in real time. And this is something we saw obviously at the COVID phase, when all the normal schedule, it's simply gone away. I mean, my kids were at home during the day, right? And the whole working hour was different, so you need to adapt to all of this. So you can look at trends by the consumption, the current consumption on the user, and that could change over a month or even one day if I don't know, if somebody is sick and stayed at home. You also need to look at trends from the data perspective, from the content perspective. For example, you have a very new show that just aired, and you want to promote that content to other users. And now you need to understand, your AI need to understand, okay, is this some kind of news article that is why it's hype, which, I mean, it doesn't make sense to intuitively recommend a few hours later, or is this some piece of content that it's, we call it evergreen, that you could utilize to other users with similar taste based on that. So the AI, again, is something very general. There's a lot of
Yeah.
algorithms, and I think the point to note here is it's not a single AI or a single algorithm. It's an ensemble of a lot of algorithms that
Yes.
predict very well and provide a very good user experience. Uh, that is, you asked before, the users today expect a good user interface. This is
Yes.
something that is become mandatory when you subscribe, when
True.
you where you're paying for a service.
True. Very, 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 very true, Ruby, about that. So I want to ask you this question: do recommendations really build engagement for a platform? I think all of us from here from OTT want to know: do they really help build engagement?
Mhm. Sure. Um, when we look at that, there are, of course, very different usage paradigms for video, and also from the customer base, you have very different KPIs. So let me pick three different experiences and explain what we have seen and achieved here in the market. If we look at one hand, think about an app or especially a website that is featuring a program guide. And we have done this for Binding, which is a large publishing house in the Netherlands. And the most famous brand, and therefore also the largest market share, is TV Gids. So it's just TV Guide in Dutch. And as they are a trusted brand, they always relied on editorial recommendations. And we have changed that. We have changed their main row to be a personal one. So that takes into account a lot of different algorithms. For people that come in the first time are not recognized, you pick in trending, but people that really regularly use that program guide, all the notions that also Ruby mentioned, where you segment this by time of day, by the device type they are connecting, and so on, and go to the full depth of understanding what they want, and really understanding what is driving their behavior against also the background of the metadata, especially there, as their own publishing house, they have that. And
Wow.
the interesting part was the click-through rate on these things, and that's really what also drives the business model, went up by a factor of three. So we have added 200% of click-throughs on that customer, and they were so happy that yeah, they made it even public in an event last year. So therefore I can really share this openly. So that's what you can expect really from personalization on a web page, on an app, when you are really looking into click-through rates. If I look at a very different experience, think more like a linear TV, but more the kinds of OTT services that you see today that mimic linear channel, but it's actually a playlist. And those playlists can be put together by editors, but they can also be driven by intelligent algorithms.
Wow.
So what we have done here with a brand in Germany for of TVs and set-top boxes was to offer personal TV channels to the users and think of them like a playlist that is automatically managed by the algorithms for you. So you have the latest news for you, you have movie picks, and it's really yeah appearing like a channel, and you can zap to that. And
Yeah.
as this was monetized through advertising, so there the KPI was how long do the people stay with that, and per household the consumption went up if you had the personalization on those channels, 120 minutes per week and household. So that's another
Wow.
measure or another paradigm I can share here. Or perhaps a third and last example here, if you look at a transactional VOD service in the Asia Pacific region, um, this was really just transactional. You need to buy the movie to have them. So a lot of people come and look, but not so many come and buy. And if you personalize this, if you bring the right things also from the back catalog in front of the people, so we have seen an increase in uptake of 25 to 30%, really month on month. I'm not talking about the first peak when you start to personalize, but really a sustained increase in monthly revenues of 30% that we gained here for the operator. And you can do this uh, in different ways. And you can do this if you just look at the price elasticity of the users. Um, you could just push for those that accept high priced things, the high priced things, but that's stupid. That's not what our algorithms do. You need really the sustained advantage, and here you need to look in to making sure that more people become regular buyers. And this was one of the reasons we have been chosen, because we, as the only supplier, also broadened um, the amount of users that regularly buy by more than 10%. So not just increase the consumption overall, but also broaden who is coming back. And I think that's what you can expect in general if the algorithms are put properly in place.
Right. I think there's some that's some fantastic results. And as a marketer in my past life, I have used it to personalize the conversation with the users by sending using the same recommendations on push and emails and on SMSs, and it's been so much more effective. The engagement really kind of doubles up there. As soon as you start contextualizing the conversation with the customer. So totally with you on that. Prashant, I have a question here for you. Given the India context, we have so much of data and there's so much craziness happening here, right? In terms of sheer scale and size. Does really AI, and especially in case of recommendations, does it really bring in, that efficiency? And if so, do you have an example to share with us?
Vani, it's actually an unfair or an old statement, I would say, that in Indian context, whether it is actually, working.
Hmm.
Because what has happened in last 15 months, if you actually go sheerly by the NPI numbers, National Payment Gateway of India, the
Yeah.
NPI numbers, they have recorded the world record and a historic transactions,
Yes.
online transactions through the NPI payment gateway, which are in tune of about 34 crore transactions, right? That's quite a historic one, and gigantic in numbers. We are almost 30% plus transactions online compared to China during the same period, right? And if you actually look at how does this happening, if you actually look at India's one or rather world's biggest telecom startup, Reliance Jio, that started about almost 5 years back. Today they are more
Yes.
than 50 crore customers. Now, how did that customer activation happened? Initially, if you remember, it was actually before. I mean, when you buy the SIM card and by the time you step out of the store, your number is activated and you're online through fingerprint, biometric, and the Aadhaar linkage that was happening, and the entire rule engine was being built using the AI, conversational AI. Right now, if you are looking at 0 to 50 crore customers in 5 years, that's a massive number, and it could happen only by with use of technology, and not only digital
Yes.
technologies, but the RPAs, rule engines, the bots and
Yes.
conversational AI. because that's the only way you can actually keep the pace. Now, interestingly, when you have that size and volume of users on OTT apps, they're also training their bots to not only learn the Indian local regional languages, and probably Himanshu would second that, they're also teaching the bots the Indian slang and the
Yeah.
regional ways and means of how you converse, so that actually gives the personalization. So if you look at the reels and the WhatsApp and the Facebook conversations, they're not only contextual, but they're hyper personalized. And when you are actually reading that in your own regional language, and India has at least 30 of them, that is what is the hyper personalization that we are talking about. And then when you have OTT platforms like maybe TikTok, though it is a little historic now, I cannot
Yes.
refrain myself from giving that example. uh, you go crazy with millions of users signing up in few months, few weeks, and it actually completely stormed from nowhere. How does this mobile studio concept captures the imagination, and probably we also surfaced that what kind of a talent a country can exhibit. Now, if you look at the recommendation engine, hyper personalization, the ease of use, and all of that, this is actually giving in, and these are some of the very smart and subtle and an embedded AI ways, which some of the disruptors are thinking, which are helping in adopting it in big time. So
Right.
AI is no longer in large enterprises. It's not only the, so to say, high tech stuff, but it has become kind of a commodity when it comes to the OTT world. It is the way in which you conceptualize and embed in your business process or a business model, that's giving you this hyper scalability factor.
Right. So coming on hyper scalability, right? That's very important because that's when we talk of India, we talk of scale, size, and the kind of data sets we are working with. So coming to you, Himanshu, which is about translation, which is about personalization at the last layer, right? Which is at the content, language level sort of a thing. Then, how accurate is AI is or helpful in doing that, because when we speak of language, there's something which is even Prashant mentioned that there's something slang and we all speak it like differently, and then there is English on top of it, which is kind of a totally different thing, and we have very localized words which we use. So Bombay has its own language versus a Delhi language. When you meet two people who's using which, and they both by the way speaking Hindi. So what's happening? How accurate is AI in your space?
So one of the difficult space we work at is natural language processing. So Indian language have different contexts, different characters. So in English, it's very easy to make engine learns on those sentences because, for example, we have multiple languages like 22 languages, and we have major two family of languages. We call it Indo-Aryan languages and then Dravidian languages. So both have different subject verb object formation of sentences. So getting those two into nitty and gritty of that, it's very very difficult. So it leads millions of sentences to train a model of from English to multiple Indian languages, and need multiple billions lines of sentences, and that too depends on that what context you are talking about. So if I say mobile, so mobile can be a phone for me, but if you are talking about transportation industry, it is
Mobility.
you are mobile, right? So both have different contexts and different meanings altogether. Bank can be river bank, right? Bank can be financial bank. I want to bank upon you. So all these things are very very different in nature, and getting those in efficient way or getting the
Yes.
contextualization of that is the key here. So how we can make that contextualization is like collecting lots of data, scraping them, and understand that what data means to us, and what and tag those data according to the domains which we are working on, right?
Right.
So as Dr. Prashant said, that conversational AI, of course. So what I am saying, if I am angry, I can say acha, and if I'm happy, and then also I can say acha. So how to bring
Right.
context in this? Machine will only
Right.
understand this acha is written there. So,
Yes.
so there would be a
Chicken and
supervised learning on those data sets, can be trained by human or can be
wow.
rectified those
Okay.
human, and then
Yes.
we create a pipeline and give them and use it. So today at Devnagari, we have been working on this from last 2.5 years, and we have processed multi-million sentences on different domains, and we have reached up to about 85% of accuracy from English to Indian languages, and there from 85 to 95 would be a good billions of sentences would be there, and
Yeah.
then we should reach that. But all in all,
Absolutely.
which I say, it's a promising, because we have close to billion people, and it's been created at a scale unparalleled everywhere else in the world, right? So people are using, so in US people used to start with um, desktop and laptops. In India we start with mobile phone. So
That's
our
correct.
users,
Yes. Absolutely.
we give them a device which is handy and which is in their language, and they can surf whatever they want, right? And and the expected growth rate of Indian language internet users is about 18%, and compared to English users that's 3%. So see,
Right.
these numbers already tell a story that leading
Hmm.
content generation platform which have already started using focusing on Hindi and other languages, 95% of YouTube videos consumed in regional languages. Such a huge
Correct.
number. So I think
Absolutely.
if
Yes.
vernacular is would be the best thing for a brand in terms of
Yes.
personalization of the content.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I think that's important. So Ruby, you've also worked with Indian data. What is that one thing, or you would like to or share was a challenge or an insight, or and how well the engine worked actually on Indian data?
On what? I'm sorry, can't hear you well.
Can you hear me?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, you're a little disconnected.
Oh, okay, okay. So my question was that since you've also worked on Indian data and we were talking about the scale size of Indian data, so I said, what is that one challenge or insight which you would like to share on the Indian data? Something which all OTT players should either be careful before doing it, or if they've walked into it, then they should use it.
Uh, so again, it's two questions. First of all, I think one thing that is really defined the Indian market. It's the customization that is needed, and that's first of all from the different language that we talked about, and till the fact that you have so much tens of millions of users or hundreds of millions of users, and each one is unique. So I think the first challenge is you need to have a platform that works on. We mentioned that before on hyper personalization, but I will take hyper personalization to a different definition, to definition of one to one, which mean okay, you could personalize the experience. You can create segments, for example, like all the users from North Mumbai or south of India, or the one who speak Hindi, or something like that. That's
Yes.
great, but you can go drill down to a single user level,
Okay.
for an account level, and you need to
Right.
understand their needs. And to be honest, you can go even deeper than that. This is something we're doing, because most of the time you have an account level, right? You
Yes.
don't even know who is the member. If we're talking about OTT, usually it's a family account, even if it's mobile or something like that. You need to understand who is from the family or from the account is currently watching, and
Yeah.
that's without the information that somebody is giving you. Okay, this is profile one, profile two, because
Right.
most of the customers don't have that profile options, and even if they do have, the users do not switch that, right? They just use the one that is currently logged in on the TV. So you need to understand, without anybody telling you, who is currently watching from within that household. So for example, in my family, it would be me, my wife, I have two little daughters. You need to understand automatically and in real time. That the key here,
Yes.
it's real time, because it's not something okay, every noon my daughter will watch and every night I'm watching. Life is
Yeah.
dynamic. Everybody's all the time, stuff change. You need to adapt. And I think this is stuff that we saw from the Indian market. That's, you asked before how much gain you see from using personalization. So once you go very deep with the hyper
Yes.
personalization, we saw over 250% increase on the Indian market just by using hyper personalization. This is both on the number of video watch and, more important, the total time viewed in the system.
Right, absolutely. Thanks for that. I think we're coming to the closure. So last, couple of minutes here. So quickly, we'll go across the table for some closing remarks, starting with you, Adolf. What is that one advice? And this question's for all of you, and you can answer one by one. That really, what is that one advice you want to give to listeners today? That how, what, sort of how they can improve their user experience in this coming year and better experience for OTT users in the country. So Adolf, we start with you.
So when you look at really a consumer, and even if you hyper personalize for him, on the one hand, we as humans are very complex beings. On the other hand, although there comes OTT and a lot of new technology, um, the basics of what we desire and what we need stay really the same. So, on the one hand, I would say it's important for everybody to know if I'm connecting to a provider. Like a big brand, I have a relationship with them. I want to know what does the big brand promote or want me to see. Then, on the other hand, I really want to see what others are doing, and this could be on a country level, this could be really down to my complete region. And the third one is what is really in this system out of the whole amount of content that is available, what is really available for me. And I think if you keep to these three things and keep the size, the amount that you show initially on the screen to a digestible level, and I think that's a very crucial and explain in the language of the user why you bring him this personal recommendation, then then you have done already more than 80% of the job to make sure you will be hyper successful.
Right. Great. Dr. Prashant, what are your closing remarks?
Yeah, so we are actually witnessing the historic and transformational changing times. And let me just give you a very simple analogy about how this world has changed from what we call as the producers or manufacturers world to the uh, service goods and service providers world, and how we have transformed our linear supply chains to what we call as the extreme consumerism. And with the OTT analogy, let me say that one side you had producers or manufacturers, other side you had the customers or consumers, and they were connected at the marketplace through a supply chain. Now this has changed, on one side as a content, other side as an eyeballs. So your consumers are your eyeballs, and the goods and service providers are the content, and they are connected through internet pipe. That's OTT for you. And what is happening is these eyeballs are always constantly looking at the options, and that's where every time, I mean, we say that data is in every connection, transactions, observation, right? And when you're saying observation, these are intelligent observations, and how you're being able to capture that using your machine learning, deep learning algorithms, and being able to put the context in the conversation, so that whether it is upselling, cross-selling, customer retention. And if you look at that, the content and eyeballs are not wanting to do one-time transactions, but they want to create a user experience on a real-time basis, on a permanent basis, right?
Right.
And that is what actually gives the repeatability of the business. And companies that are not only having the excellent products, but people who have been able to do this successfully using digital technologies are the ones who are being
Yes.
able to ride on these hyper scalability success in the OTT world.
Right. So, yes, Himanshu, do you have any closing words? Ritika is already giving me indicators here.
Yeah. If I say closing would be building a localized platform to generate higher traction and reach out to a larger data set for audience
Yes.
should be the first thing in the on the list. for OTT players and other active listeners out here. And creating more content in Indian languages available on search results would be really necessary to, so that they can find out their content in their language, and they can browse it well and search it well, and the speed, the scalability to reach that content to that particular person in native language would be the key takeaway here.
Right. Great. Thanks. Ruby, what about you? This last 2 cents. Your closing
I think
remarks.
everybody said, but if I need to in one sentence, I think you have to add customization and personalization. So if you have a product, your product is relatively static, right, to all the users, the first gap into personalization is a huge. You'll see huge increase on all of your KPIs. That's the first the first place you should do. If you already have some kind of personalization, you should, you know, go to the next phase, which is real time and going to the household level if you're able. Then you'll see the second increase on the KPI. It's actually harder to get these KPIs, but with today's technology, uh, this is something that we're seeing over and over all the time. I mean, we have companies that, okay, we already have a recommendation engine. Why do you think you will do better? And to be honest, they just test it and they see because it's the next level.
Right. So I think very, very, very exciting conversation here. A lot of learnings. Learning my top three takeaways here are personalization, personalization, personalization. Important, crucial. We used so many words for it. Please don't ignore it. It has to be done. It's a must-have. Recommendations engine bring huge engagement. We heard from Adolf and from Ruby both. It's pretty massive how it has changed and built impact for many organizations. It is definitely here for India as well, which Prashant spoke about. So many different other use cases which can be used to do it. And yes, language is a must-have. By changing, just adding language contextualization to search could change your results. So a lot of insightful conversation here. And over to you, Ritika. And apologies for stretching this by another 5 minutes.
No worries, no worries, Swami. So thank you to all the panelists for such an insightful session. I mean, we had really a lot of fun. In fact, my all the colleagues were also listening to this session. So it was amazing. I would also like to extend my thank you to all the delegates who attended this session. And with this, we come to the end to the fifth edition of Pixels. Hope everybody had a lot of fun. So thank yous and stay safe. Thank you.